We have a handful of Dallas Stars participating in some off-season hockey, as well as some prospects participating in some playoff hockey of their own. And on today's show, we'll talk about Logan Stankoven and the historic performance he's putting up in the WHL playoffs. We'll talk about some of the Dallas Stars participating in the IIHF World Championships. And then to close out, we will talk about the current state of the Stanley Cup Playoffs, all coming up on a Friday episode of Locked On Stars.
You're Locked On Stars, your daily podcast on the Dallas Stars. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Howdy, Stars fans. Welcome back to the Locked On Stars podcast, the only daily podcast covering your Dallas Stars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Dane Lewis, your local expert on all things Dallas Stars hockey, credential member of the Dallas Stars Media, coming to you on this Friday, May 27th. Thank you guys for the patience with the delay of this episode. Had a late night working. The other job that I work was up till around 2 o'clock, unable to record, so the episode is coming out now, and I appreciate you guys' patience and your understanding with the video as well, as the hotel I'm at does not have very good Wi-Fi to support video recording, streaming, downloading, you name it. So today's episode will be audio only. Again, it will be on YouTube with just a Locked On Stars logo thrown up, but then we should be back to normal on Monday. But thank you guys again for stopping by and making us your first listen of the day. Whether you are a recurring listener or this is your first time here, thank you for stopping by. Be sure to subscribe to our show if you do not do so already. Truly do appreciate the continued support on YouTube, as well as all of the podcasting platforms out there. But without any further hesitation, let's get right into today's episode, starting with, of course, one of the biggest names in the Dallas Stars prospect pool, a guy that was drafted in the second round of the 2021 draft. That is, of course, Logan Stankoven, who currently plays for the Kamloops Blazers of the WHL, who are still live and kicking in the playoffs in the WHL. The Dallas Stars prospect is only 19 years old, but he is having a historic playoff run right now with the Blazers. Through 13 games, he has 4 hat tricks, 17 goals, and 12 assists, which is just absolutely insane to see those kind of numbers put up. And he is right now on pace to break the record for most goals in a WHL postseason at 24. That is a record held by Blair Chapman. And I mean, if the Blazers can go all the way to the championship round, they're currently playing in round 3 of the WHL playoffs, tied at 2 in their best of 7 series with the Seattle Thunderbirds. He has a great chance, Stankoven does, to reach that 24 goals mark, I mean, because 17 goals, only needing 7 more goals, and with the pace that he's been scoring goals in these playoffs, it is absolutely a very real possibility that he can do that if his team can stay alive and can continue to advance to the next round and play well in the championship, which, given how Stankoven and the rest of the team has played up to this point, that is not too far of a stretch to believe that that is possible. And Stankoven, this isn't anything new for him here in the postseason. He had an absolutely insane regular season. 104 points, was third in the WHL in 59 games played, 45 goals, 59 assists. And I mean, we've been talking about him all throughout this season, him and Wyatt Johnston, the 2 big names for the Dallas Stars in the 2021 draft. And right now, Stankoven definitely living up to the hype, which is insane because I think he was taken between the 40th and 50th pick overall in that second round. And right now, he's looking like an absolute steal for this Dallas Stars organization, just because he's playing excellently and showing a ton of potential. Obviously, you don't want to, make too many bold assumptions and say he's going to be an instant NHL starter very soon or one of the best players ever, because obviously the WHL and the NHL are very different, and there's still probably a little bit of ways to go in terms of development for Stankoven. But this is definitely a great sign that he's performing like this in the playoffs in such a big moment. In the conference finals, or the equivalent of the conference finals, just used to saying that with the third round of the postseason, that he's performing this way in such a clutch situation for his team. Like I said, the Kamloops Blazers are currently tied at 2 in their best of 7 series with the Seattle Thunderbirds. Game 5 will be played tonight, and the Blazers have been rolling throughout these playoffs. Only 2 losses. They took down the Spokane Chiefs in 4 games, and they took down the Vancouver Giants in 6 games, winning 4 out of winning 4 and losing 2. So they're doing pretty well, and then they've only, of course, lost those other 2 games to the Seattle Thunderbirds. So only 4 losses in total, but still seem to be holding their own very well throughout the playoffs. And Stankoven is just a huge part of that, and he's playing himself into a potential NHL debut and consistent, or at least a consistent NHL roster spot, if you ask me. And he's doing it at lightning speed with performances like this. And Stars director of player personnel, Rich Peverly, did have a quote on the Dallas Stars website. Kyle Shohara did a piece on Logan on the Stars website. That's what's inspired me to do this piece about him on today's episode and highlight what an excellent playoffs he's having. And Peverly, again, Stars director of player personnel, had this to say about Logan Stankoven. With Logan, you don't ever have to worry about the off-ice stuff. He's very committed. He's incredibly hardworking, and he just seems like a guy who's going to get it. He wants to get it. He's very determined. He has an NHL shot, and we knew that when we drafted him. This year, he's put himself in situations to become more of a playmaker, and he's been playing in the middle of most of the year, but he has played on the wing a little bit. So that's absolutely fantastic to hear from a guy who is the director of player personnel for this organization. And it seems like maybe risk is not the right word, but it seems like the Stars organization was maybe taking a little bit of a chance on a guy like Stankoven in the draft, and it seems to be paying off right now because he is showing a lot of that upside as far as his scoring ability, and like Peverly said, that he's starting to show a little bit of that playmaking ability as well. And that just is an absolute lethal weapon that you can have. We can see the payoff of it with the Edmonton Oilers right now with guys like Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, who can score goals but can also just be fantastic playmakers. And we can see how that benefits their team when you put the appropriate talent around that. So hopefully Stankoven can continue to have a great WHL playoffs and continue to develop properly. And I'm excited to eventually see him in a victory green sweater. I think he could bring a lot of energy to a Dallas Stars lineup, and I think he could very easily become a fan favorite at the American Airlines Center for years to come if he continues to work hard and develop well, which according to Peverly, it seems like that's something that he will continue to do. He will continue to work hard and better himself so that way he can eventually make the NHL roster and represent the city of Dallas with pride. But we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we are going to talk about the IIHF World Championships and talk about some of the Dallas Stars players participating in that tournament. Today's episode of Locked on Stars is brought to you by Athletic Greens and their product, AG1. With one delicious scoop of AG1, you are absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, and whole food-sourced superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, focus, and aging. It's lifestyle friendly, so whether you eat keto, paleo, vegan, dairy-free, or gluten-free, it contains less than 1 gram of sugar, no GMOs, no nasty chemicals or artificial anything, while still tasting good, and it supports better sleep quality and recovery and mental clarity. Athletic Greens was founded when the founder experienced a ton of gut health issues and ended up on a complicated supplement routine to recover. It cost him over $100 a day, so he created Athletic Greens after experiencing how difficult it was to create an optimal nutrition routine on your own. Right now, it's the time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. It's just 1 scoop in a cup of water every day, and that's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NHL Network. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/NHL Network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. And we're moving on with this Friday episode of Locked on Stars. Thank you again for making us your first listen of the day. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Now podcast, nightly recaps of every NHL game with analysis from our local experts. It's free and available wherever you get your podcast at. And let's continue to talk about today's younger Dallas Stars, or some Dallas Stars participating in the offseason. A little bit of a mixture of the two of those. We talked about Logan Stankoven participating in the WHL playoffs, and we have some current Dallas Stars, some NHLers, who have been partaking in the International Ice Hockey Federation Championship Tournament. players going back to their home countries, representing their home countries on the ice to see who can win a gold medal. The Dallas Stars had Jacob Peterson, Miro Heiskanen, and Essa Lindell, all representing the Dallas Stars. Jacob Peterson, of course, representing his home country of Sweden, and Miro and Essa playing for the country of Finland. Unfortunately, Jacob Peterson is no longer in the tournament as Sweden was eliminated just the other day. Unfortunately, but it's still really cool to see him playing, cool to continue to see him being active. He and the rest of Team Sweden did lose a heartbreaker in overtime to Team Canada on Thursday. And as we know, Team Canada always a powerhouse in pretty much any hockey tournament they participate in. A very hard-fought game, and again, a pretty heartbreaking fashion to lose in overtime on Thursday to Canada. But Jacob Peterson, still a pretty decent performance. He had 2 goals and 3 assists throughout the tournament, and I am fully convinced that moments like these will continue to help prepare him for greatness in the NHL. I mean, these are big situations on a national stage, and so the pressure's on. This isn't just kind of like for fun off-season hockey. I mean, this is for national pride. This is, to bring a trophy and to bring some hardware back to your nation. And so there's definitely pressure, and there's definitely some intensity around tournaments like this. And so I think a situation and, a routine like this for Jacob Peterson can only be good for him in the long run as he continues to grow into the NHL player that he is becoming, because he had a good rookie season, but obviously was not the most active guy in the playoffs that we saw. And so hopefully moments like this will help, give him a little bit of edge next time it's an intense moment for the Stars and next time they find themselves in the postseason. And on the other end, we have Essa Lindell and Mira Heiskinen, again, representing the country of Finland, 2 members of what's become known as the Finnish Mafia for the Dallas Stars. Tons of Finnish players on the Stars roster. Essa Lindell has 1 assist so far through the tournament, and Mira Heiskinen has 2 assists, and they will play the United States on Saturday in a semifinals game. Going to be an absolutely exciting game, going to be very fun to watch. And, of course, the winner moves on to the championship, and the loser will play for the bronze medal. But in this tournament, Finland ranks 4th in scoring efficiency, while the U.S. is only at 12th in scoring efficiency. However, they do have some excellent defense and goaltending. The United States ranks 2nd in save percentage, which is what has gotten them this far in the tournament, is good goaltending and pretty effective defense. Their offense leaves a little bit to be desired. But I think that this could be a very interesting matchup to see how a really high-powered offense like Finland going at some really high-powered defense and goaltending. And the winner of that game will go on to play the winner of a game between Canada and the Czech Republic. And, of course, again, the winner of that game moves on to the gold medal game, and the loser of that game will advance, or I guess unadvance, to the bronze medal game. So be sure to keep an eye on that if you want to follow along and see how our players do. Essa and Miro will be playing for Team Finland. And, this tournaments like these I think are great all around. I talk about Jacob Peterson continuing to grow and develop. I mean, there's still tons of current NHL talent, but also future NHL talent in these tournaments, and it's just absolutely great to see a few members of the Stars staying active in the offseason, getting reps versus guys that they'll likely be playing for years to come. I mean, more than likely, or guys that that they might eventually be teammates with. It's just good to see these guys staying active by playing hockey. I imagine that many other players on the Stars roster are working out consistently and staying active in other ways. But good for these younger guys, especially Petey and Miro, and even Essa, if you want to call him a young guy. Not really a young guy in the grand scheme of things for the Stars, but great to see them staying active. Great to see them having fun representing their home countries with the game that they enjoy playing. And I think it's a testament to how much they truly love the game that they're going back and continuing to play in these tournaments and play with their teammates in their home country. So really, really exciting stuff. Hopefully, obviously I'm an American. Many of you listening probably American as well. So, you maybe like to see Team USA win, but if Team USA isn't going to win, I hope that Finland is able to pull it off. So, which it's going to have to be one of those 2 teams because they cannot meet in the championship game. So I'm excited to see how the United States versus Finland game plays out, and I hope it's an exciting game, and I anticipate that it will be, and we'll probably see some pretty good goaltending, if that is my guess. But to close out the show here in a second, we're going to shift our focus to the Stanley Cup playoffs and talk about the current state of how things have shaken out. I'll give you my thoughts and opinions, and then we'll send you on your way for the weekend. Today's episode of Locked On Stars is also brought to you by BetOnline.net. Our partners at BetOnline continue to be the #1 source for all your betting needs and sports info. Find all the latest odds, news, and sports developments, including this year's basketball playoffs, Major League Baseball scores, fights, and even next season's NFL futures. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline.net, where the game starts. And we're closing out this Friday episode of Locked On Stars, talking about the Stanley Cup Playoffs and how everything currently sits, and give you a little bit of some updated thoughts on my end of how things might shape out as the NHL season finally is starting to wind down. Unfortunately, starting to wind down. What a season it has been. But we do have 2 of the 4 teams that have advanced to the conference finals, or we know 2 of the 4 teams that will be playing in the conference finals. Starting in Florida, the Battle of Florida, definitely not as exciting as I thought it would be, and I think many other people as well. The Tampa Bay Lightning swept the Florida Panthers. Not just won, they swept the Florida Panthers. So the Panthers had a ton of trouble getting any offense flowing consistently, which just feels weird to say because they were one of the best offensive teams in the league all season. They won the President's Trophy, and this is just a testament to how good Tampa Bay truly is and how much of a threat they've been all season to run it back and potentially win a 3rd championship. I mean, they are absolutely catching fire at the right time. And of course, you have to talk about Andrei Vasilevskiy, who could very well win himself a 2nd Conn Smythe Trophy, his 2nd in 3 seasons, if things continue to go well for this Tampa Bay team. He has a .932 save percentage. And again, he shut down the Florida Panthers offense, which is something very easy to talk about, very easy to say, but is much harder to actually do. And Andrei Vasilevskiy has done a fantastic job of doing it. And if I'm Carolina or New York, I'm very, very nervous to go up against this Tampa Bay team because that is just insane. We know that there's a history of the President's Trophy team maybe not doing that well in the playoffs, but to get swept in the 2nd round against a team that you were competitive with all season is just absolutely insane to me. But nonetheless, the Tampa Bay Lightning moving on, going to the Eastern Conference Finals with a chance to make their 3rd Stanley Cup Finals appearance in 3 seasons. But moving out to the Western Conference for a second, game 5 last night that ended the series. The Edmonton Oilers get past the Calgary Flames in 5 games. Not exactly the way I would have expected that series to go after the opening round series we saw between the Stars and Flames, and especially after that Game 1. That was a pretty competitive Game 1 of the Battle of Alberta. I was expecting this to maybe be a 6-7 game series, back and forth. But the Oilers just showed a ton of dominance and a ton of resilience. I mean, Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl each have 26 points. I mean, what else can you ask for from those guys in the playoffs? Evander Kane, I was shocked to find out, actually leads the league in playoff goals right now. He has 12. Take that information and do with it what you will. If McDavid and Draisaitl are leading with points, but they're not even leading with goals, I mean, that is, again, we talked about Stankoven's playmaking ability and how important that is. Draisaitl and McDavid not necessarily scoring the most goals, but still being effective members of their team and setting up their teammates for success. And whether they're on the ice or not, which they are on the ice a lot of the time, that's something that catches on, and that's something that can be contagious, is that unselfishness to make the extra play or to set up your teammate. And they're just clicking, similar to Tampa Bay. This is just an Oilers team that is clicking at the right times right now. And Mike Smith, despite some of the skepticism about him going into the postseason, playing pretty well. Not the most amazing numbers, but still pretty respectable numbers with a .927 save percentage and a .270 goals against average. So the Oilers, another team catching fire at the right time. I think a lot of people were skeptical of how deep the Oilers could go in the playoffs this season, especially after that first-round series against the Kings. I don't think anyone was expecting that series, to go to 7. And then, of course, you match up with the Flames, who were a much better regular season team. You think, we probably have another 7-game series on our hands, but nope. The Oilers take care of business in 5, and now they're actually the team waiting for Colorado and St. Louis to get done. Speaking of which, we will have Avs at Blues Game 6 tonight, Friday night. Nathan MacKinnon in Game 5 with one of the prettiest goals that you will ever see to put the Avalanche ahead late. The series, I mean, that just seemed poetic. That seemed like a poetic seal to a series that had mostly been dominated by the Colorado Avalanche, and this has just been a very intense series with a lot of, almost just hatred. I'll come out and say it for one another. I mean, with the whole Nazem Kadri and Jordan Binnington situation, and the St. Louis fans just with awful reactions, saying just terrible things about Nazem Kadri after that situation. And then, of course, the Blues going after him and very clearly going after him on the ice. But Kadri responding with a hat trick and still performing at his best, continuing to pour on what has been a fantastic season for him. But yeah, this series seemed over after that McKinnon goal. I mean, again, that was just a beautiful goal, a just nasty move to get to the net, and the series seemed over. But then here comes the St. Louis Blues. Robert Thomas ties it with less than a minute to play in Game 5, and then Tyler Bozak wins it, and the St. Louis Blues are living to see another game. They will have Game 6 tonight at home at the Enterprise Center, and so we'll be keeping an eye on that one. I still think the Colorado Avalanche will win this series, but I think it's going to be a absolute fight to get that win, and I'm excited to see how it plays out. And then, of course, we go back to the Eastern Conference to close things out. The Carolina Hurricanes up 3-2 on the New York Rangers after yet another home win. And this is the Carolina team that I think I said it earlier in the playoffs. I just don't know how much I trust this team in the playoffs. I mean, they can win at home. They're the best team in the playoffs this season when they play at home, but they cannot win a game on their road, or so it has been that way throughout all of these playoffs, even against Boston, and of course in this series against the Rangers. And so with Game 6 on Saturday at Madison Square Garden, it might be easy to say the Rangers get the win there, but can the Carolina Hurricanes finally shift the fortune in their favor on the road, and can they close off the series and advance to the conference finals? Because as much as I don't trust them, I just don't know. I feel like they have a good shot against the Lightning, but also I think Igor Shesterkin, similar to Andrei Vasilevskiy, could also give the Rangers a legit chance to win that series. I don't really know who I trust more to face the Tampa Bay Lightning and knock them out of the playoffs. Again, because I think Tampa Bay is the hottest team out east right now. It's going to be much easier said than done again. So I'm very, very curious and skeptical that either of these teams can get the job done and knock Tampa Bay out of the playoffs and help avoid sending them to the Stanley Cup Finals for the third time in a row. But we'll have to see how it plays out, and maybe if the Canes can finally get that first road win, that will set the tone for them for the rest of the playoffs. So we'll just have to see how it shapes out. This has been a very interesting Stanley Cup playoffs, and I'm glad it's not over yet, and I'm glad that we still have a good handful of hockey games left in our lives before the summer gets going. But that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Stars. Thank you again for stopping by and making Locked On Stars your first listen of the day. Make your second listen of the day the Locked On NHL podcast. From first round matchups to each Stanley Cup kiss, Locked On NHL covers the playoffs like no other. Hear the latest news and opinions from local experts every Monday through Friday. It's free and available wherever you get your podcast at. Just like the Locked On Stars podcast, you can subscribe to our show on YouTube as well as on your favorite podcasting platform and leave a rating or review if you like what you hear. You can also find and follow me on Twitter at Dane_Lewis and our show as well at Locked On Stars. Thank you guys so much again for the patience with today's episode. Thank you guys for listening, for tuning in all week, for making us your first listen of the day. We'll see you back here on Monday with more off-season content.